Today we're pitting AMD's legendary 5700X3D against the 7600X, two similarly priced CPUs with very different platforms. AM4's best versus AM5's entry level. How do they stack up in Escape from Tarkov, one of the most CPU demanding games out there? We'll compare their performance across key maps, labs and streets at 1080, 1440, and 4K. Stick around because the results might surprise you. At the start of each section, I'll briefly explain the testing scenarios and settings used because benchmarking numbers are only meaningful when the conditions are clear and consistent. Think of it like comparing sports cars. Two lap times on different tracks don't tell you much, but when two cars run the same track, the results actually mean something. Similarly, FPS comparisons are only valuable when you know the racetrack, so to speak, or in this case, the settings and scenarios being tested. Now, let's dive into the benchmarks. To establish baseline performance, I started with labs offline with no AI, following a consistent route for accurate results that you can see on the screen here. Next, I tested the streets of Tarkov, both offline with no AI and online in live servers. Here's the route I took. I started off in Klimov and ended up on Lexos. These are usually the two heaviest areas in terms of performance. For each scenario, I ran 3 tests per route at 1080, 1440, and 4K, taking the averages to ensure reliable comparisons. Now let's dive into the results. Alright, so let's get to the numbers. In labs 1080 offline with no bots, the 5700X3D edges ahead in average FPS and 1% lows, about a 1 to 5% difference, not that much. However, the 7600X significantly outperforms it in 0.1% lows, with a 33% advantage, making it more resistant to major frame drops. In 1440, the 5700X3D again takes the lead in average FPS and 1% lows, but again the 7600X excels in 0.1% lows with a 23% advantage. In 4K, the 7600X is the clear winner with an 11% higher average FPS, about a 9% higher 1% low, and significantly stronger 0.1% lows at a 34% advantage. Moving on to the streets offline testing where there are more assets, the 5700X3D delivered a slightly better average FPS on streets offline in 1080 with a 5% advantage. The 7600X had smoother 1% lows and significantly better 0.1% lows at 2 and 26% advantages respectively. In 1440, the 5700X3D had about a 10% average FPS advantage and were basically even in 1% lows. However, the 7600X still outperformed the 5700X3D in 0.1% lows with an 8% advantage. In 4K, the 5700X3D again had an advantage in average FPS with a 13% lead. Despite this, the 7600X had the lead in 1% and 0.1% lows with the 7% and 32% difference respectively. So far, the 5700X3D and 7600X have been closely matched in terms of average FPS and 1% lows, with the 7600X holding a consistent edge in 0.1% lows. These results reflect baseline performance in offline mode with no AI, no players, or network variables, scenarios where raw CPU power takes center stage. However, the true test lies in how these CPUs handle the added complexity of online gameplay, where cache size and efficiency come into play. In Streets 1080 online, the 5700X3D leads across the board with a 28% higher average FPS, 13% higher 1% lows, and 8% better 0.1% lows, providing a smoother overall experience. In 1440, the 5700X3D continues to outperform the 7600X with a 34% advantage in average FPS, 26% better 1% lows, and a whopping 39% boost in 0.1% lows, making it significantly more stable in demanding scenes. At 4K, the trend continues. The 5700X3D shows a 41% higher average FPS, 38% better 1% lows, and 26% better 0.1% lows, maintaining strong performance even in the most demanding resolution. When adding in the AI players and network variables, the cache plays a bigger role in performance here, and we can see the difference clearly. Quick look at temps and power usage. The 5700X3D averaged around 53 degrees Celsius, while the 7600 was around 48 degrees Celsius, quite a bit cooler. The 57 averaged around 53 watts of usage, and the 7600X was averaging around 57 watts of usage. Alright, so let's talk value, because if you're dropping cash on a new gaming rig, you want to know what you're getting for your money. Both the 5700X3D and 7600X are hovering around $200 new, and you can build a full system around either for roughly the same cost. The 5700X3D, it's an absolute king when it comes to dollar to performance ratio. I've said it a million times on this channel, and pound for pound, it's the best value for a higher end gaming CPU. If you're buying everything brand new, motherboard, RAM, storage, cooler, PSU, you're looking at about $470 straight from Amazon. Toss in a GPU of your choice and you're good to go. If you get your 5700X3D off of AliExpress and don't mind getting some used parts, you could probably bring that total to under $400 easily. Additionally, there are a lot of people still rocking older AM4 chips, and in those cases the value is even more unbeatable because it's a simple drop-in upgrade with huge potential. A decent 7600X system base, motherboard, RAM, storage, cooler, and a PSU can be built for just a little bit more than the 57 system, around $500 straight off of Amazon. So you'd be paying a little bit more for a system that performs a little worse, but it would give you the option to drop in a 7800X3D or a 9800X3D later on without having to change out the motherboard and RAM. Now, personally, I don't believe in buying parts to future-proof a build. I always build for what I'm going to use right now and then reassess the available parts and prices when I'm actually ready to upgrade. The reason for this is that new parts are always around the corner, even when you buy the latest hardware. This means prices are continually dropping as well. So I don't see a point in paying more for something I'm not going to use now, knowing it will probably be cheaper later anyways when I'm actually ready to upgrade. To each their own, but this has always been the way I approach building my systems. To wrap things up, the 5700X3D is a clear winner for Tarkov. It delivers smoother gameplay and holds up better at higher resolutions, especially on demanding maps like Streets. With its ability to handle the high asset count, AI, and player spawns that put a heavy load on the CPU, it's the best option for anyone on a budget or sticking with AM4. Now, like I said earlier, I'm not a believer of future-proofing, but hey, I get it. Some of you might value the convenience of dropping in a better CPU down the road without having to sell off your old system and rebuild. If that's you, the 7600X is your entry into AM5, though you'll be paying more upfront for lower performance today. And that's all I got for this one. Let me know in the comments which CPU you'd pick for Tarkov, and while you're at it, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on more PC hardware comparisons and breakdowns. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.